Vampire the Masquerade Swansong. It's a bit of a mouthful for a title, but not the first. I originally played another title, the iconic Bloodlines, back when I still had a full head of hair, but these days I look rather more like a Nosferatu, one of the vampire clans in the Vampire the Masquerade universe. This new game treads new ground, in that it isn't the same type of game as that flawed classic from long ago. Sure, they both do role-playing, but whereas Bloodlines was more action-orientated, this plays more like an adventure game with vampire detectives.
Wet laundry. Mold. It's been here for several days.
And also has a far more serious tone. So no arguments with stop signs here.
That's not a good sign.
There are some moments where you might find something that'll make you smile though, such as when Caleb pretends to be an FBI agent called Smith and talks to somebody called Anderson.
Lieutenant Anderson, I'm in charge of the investigation.
Special Agent Smith, FBI.
Really? Smith? Is that some kind of joke?
I'm sure any Matrix fans might notice that. Indeed, a lot of the gameplay can be done at a relatively leisurely pace, apart from a section very late on in the game that is entirely dependent on decisions you made leading up to it. But let's roll back a bit first. No surprises here, but for those of you that hadn't figured it out yet, yes, this game is in the horror genre, and as such has very adult themes throughout. The characters, being vampires, are monsters by nature, and the game makes no attempts to hide that truth throughout. Particularly every time you need to feed.
I was forced to do stuff that I'm sorry about. Awful things.
The game starts off with a brief montage of macabre scenes, before quickly introducing you to one of the vampires you'll get to play as. Yes, that's right, in this game you don't get just one character to play as, but three. How about that for a deal? Here we have of the clan Toreador, who are very artsy, sophisticated and seductive. Laisha, who is Malkavian, and whose clan members have various psychological traits.
You remembered. That's good.
And Caleb of clan Ventru, who are very domineering and controlling, and tend to fill leadership positions. An example being the Prince of the Camarilla, Hazel Iverson. Prince being Vampire the Masquerade speak for the leader, and the Camarilla being the ruling faction of a somewhat responsible vampire society. Oh, and while we're at it, the vampires themselves are referred to as kindred, and the human cattle upon which they feed and manipulate referred to as kine. Indeed, there is a whole host of Vampire the Masquerade terminology, all handily accessible in the menu, and gradually unlocking as you play the game. The initial premise is that the local Camarilla faction of vampires, based in Boston, have recently been attacked during an important meeting between them and another rival group, the Hartford Chantry. The headquarters of the Camarilla is then put under Code Red, a form of lockdown, with no one allowed out, apart from our three protagonists. Via three separate stories, all intertwined, you'll get to play detective as you learn about both the world of the vampires and also about their foes. The game is very cutscene and conversation heavy, which is obviously good if you like that kind of thing, but probably not something for people who want a bit more action. Most of the gameplay revolves around talking to people and manipulating them through conversation, searching for clues with the aid of your vampire powers, and generally staying under the radar. Even the more action-involved section mentioned earlier involves basically trying to be as stealthy as possible. Indeed, most of the violence of the game is played out in cutscenes rather than you physically controlling the character in real time to behave a certain way. The most common monstrous activity you'll find yourself doing is feeding on mostly unsuspecting members of human society, termed the Kiss. No, not that Kiss. This one. It involves first finding a safe area for said feeding, and then selecting from one of a small number of potential meals. Humans, with them being called prey. You'll then get a rather gruesome scene play out, with a brief quick-time event where you hold a key to control how much blood you take. It did seem a bit fiddly at first, but I soon got the hang of it. The scenes obviously differ for each character in that they are different themselves, but otherwise they are entirely identical, and thus can become a bit repetitive. I did accidentally drain a couple of victims of their fluids at first, but other than a few negative points towards a total representing humanity, there wasn't really any penalty for minor transgressions. Obviously, those that push the boundaries of vampire etiquette a bit more may find things ending a bit differently.
I don't get involved in that kind of thing.
The story itself starts off a bit slow and took a while to gather pace.
Not good. Not good at all.
But while the first couple of hours may or may not grab your attention,
Never, actually.
you'll probably find yourself getting more invested in it as you progress, and by the end, I felt that it was a decent, if not quite fully satisfying effort.
He's a liar. It's not true.
I did like how the playable characters are developed as you progress, with snippets of story gradually coalescing towards a comprehensive outcome. There are plenty of other characters to learn about, aside from the main three, and some have quite complex and intriguing backgrounds. Leisha, for example, has her daughter Halsey constantly accompanying her, with a sub-story of her character making you question whether she is real or just imaginary. Caleb also seems to have an uneasy relationship with his child. That's child with an E on the end, child being one whom a vampire has embraced or created themselves, with that parent vampire being called a sire. The main game endings are variable, which can be both good and bad, as your decisions may result in the ending being slightly disappointing, as was the case for me, but as they are also tailored to your own choices, they add to potential replayability, along with the variability of skills that you can choose. Speaking of which, vampire skills are referred to as disciplines, with base skills referred to as attributes, and both of these are acquired by spending XP or experience that is gained by completing certain activities throughout a level. Each character has their own pool of XP to both earn and spend, with some basic options being available for all three, but with the more clan-focused vampire disciplines being tailored towards each character. If you happen to have upgraded a discipline to a high enough skill level, it can be very useful in the level, but most of the time, since I didn't know what to expect, I'd often find I didn't have a high enough skill level to do something. At the end of a level, I'd then upgrade that skill to find out that another skill would have been more useful in the following area. Of course, you can eventually make use of the skills you upgraded, but I just got the feeling in the earlier levels that whatever I chose to upgrade wasn't always the best choice in the short term. Going back towards the dialogue aspects of the game, you'll often have a selection of options to choose from after hearing what the other character has to say. Some of the time, and depending on your own skills or disciplines previously selected, you'll be given the option to focus a particular option more than the others. You'll be able to use a pool of points to enhance the chances of a particular conversation option being successful with another character, with your skills being pitted against theirs, and the one with the higher success chance having a high chance of thus winning the conversation. The conversations themselves can be like battles, with multiple stages, and are known as confrontations. Depending on the confrontation, you may or may not be given an allowance of failures or misses, which, if exceeded, fails the overall confrontation. This could make it impossible to complete a certain task, and thus miss out on extra experience. Also, there may be consequences for the failures later on in the story. The levels are quite varied and interesting to explore, covering surreal-looking surroundings to more conventional areas, such as offices, apartments, and the dreaded sewer levels of times past. They differ enough to keep the game interesting, and only the central hub of the Camarilla is returned to more than once, so you should find plenty of new things to keep your interest piqued. Puzzles do make an appearance in the game, one example being when I had to use trial and error to complete a puzzle with stone slabs. This involves simply turning 3 rings to connect a route from the middle to the outer section, and while it did take me a few minutes, it wasn't too difficult. Another puzzle involved using different valves to control steam pressures, with the ultimate aim being to knock an enemy down so that you can progress through to another area. This too was relatively simple, but like the first example, wasn't particularly memorable.
This is a waste of my time.
The main puzzle I remembered was only because it was hard, at least for me. It involved turning swans in the right direction to unlock a safe, and although I half understood the logic of what I needed to do, which was related to the paintings and the position of the swans, I still hadn't a clue which painting referred to which direction, as they didn't seem to make sense.
I've never seen anything like it.
I even checked a guide, but the guide made no sense either, since it mentioned the directions the guy was pointing related to the position of the swans, except, to my eyes, they don't. Maybe it's just me.
That doesn't work.
The game saves automatically at various points in the game, but you can force a save by triggering a conversation, feeding on an available human, or moving to a different area, so long as you stay within the current scene. I must admit, I did misunderstand things at first, as I thought by scene the game meant the most recent conversation, and on reloading the current scene I found myself at the start of the level, so take the word scene in the game as the current level or chapter that you're partaking in. Fortunately, you can skip through conversations, so I didn't waste too much time. Graphically, the visuals are certainly okay, but character models are definitely a mixed bag, with some characters having an expression like a rabbit caught in headlights.
Yes, it's horrible.
The character animations can be a bit stiff and awkward at times too, with lip syncing not being especially great. Indeed, glitches have appeared in character animations during a couple of cutscenes. On a more positive note, levels are appropriately gory, with numerous examples of blood-spattered walls and floors throughout. The sounds and music in the game also help to enhance the atmosphere as well, although none were particularly memorable.
A selection of contemporary music. Ugh, how awful.
The only thing I do remember is the drums sounding off in the end credits. Voice acting is mostly decent, apart from rare instances of unusual delivery.
Come back anytime you want.
In conclusion, overall, Swansong is a solid offering that should keep Vampire the Masquerade fans entertained, and anyone else that likes a lot of story and dialogue.
There's skid marks on the ground and signs of a minor accident at the exit.
The game took me around 26 hours to complete, so it offers a fairly decent amount of content. I explored all areas fairly thoroughly, but there's no doubt I missed some things though. While slow to get going, the build up to the ending can be quite engaging, and it's only the finale that is variable in terms of how satisfying the conclusion of the game will be for you. Hopefully this game doesn't end up as a Swansong itself. Anyway, that's it for this review. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
There's no time left. We have to go.
It's over.
Good night.